Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Teaching and Learning. I am Ranjita and I am going to give you the b.ed notes of semester 4. In the last video, we have completed the paper A to B, that is knowledge and curriculum of semester 4. And today we are going to start paper 10, that is creating an inclusive school. It's unit 1, that is inclusive education. So our first topic is changing concept of inclusion, that is shifting from separation to integration to inclusion. Okay. This is our first topic of unit 1. Let us start with the education. Here you can see there are 3 points I've given here, that is special education, integrated education and inclusive education. ये तीनों से होते हुए हम जाते हैं inclusive education तक, that is inclusion. Okay, so let's just say separation. About 100 years ago, disabled children were not sent to school at all, as they were not allowed in schools for normal children. It will be with normal children. Then concept of special school come, and school which was specially made for disabled children as per their needs. It was separated from normal school system, so it is called as separation. ठीक है, तो ये है हमारा फर्स्ट, दैट इज सेपरेशन. तो सेपरेशन में क्या हो रहा है, अभी भी आप देख सकते हो, डिसेबल चिल्ड्रन नॉर्मल स्टूडेंट्स के साथ में स्कूल बहुत ही रेयर ही जाते हैं. मतलब आप कहीं कहीं देखोगे, पहले क्या होता था कि उस टाइम उन लोगों को स्कूल नहीं भेजा जाता था, वो लोग नॉर्मल चिल्ड्रन के साथ स्कूल नहीं जा सकते थे. ठीक है, तो उनके लिए एक अलग से स्पेशल स्कूल बनाया गया, जिससे जहाँ पे सारे डिसेबल चिल्ड्रन एज पर देयर नीड्स, उन लोगों के लिए स्पेशली था ना, तो उनके नीड्स के अकॉर्डिंगली सारा कुछ सेट किया गया था. ठीक है, इट वॉज सेपरेट फ्रॉम नॉर्मल स्कूल सिस्टम, सो इट इज कॉल्ड सेपरेशन. नॉर्मल स्कूल सिस्टम से सेपरेट था, इसलिए उसे सेपरेशन कहा गया था. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल, आई एम फ्रॉम जमशेदपुर, सो आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट जमशेदपुर. यहाँ पे मैंने क्या देखा है ना कि नॉर्मल चिल्ड्रन जो है वो सारे के लिए नॉर्मल स्कूल्स है ही. ठीक है, डिसेबल चिल्ड्रन के लिए देयर इज वन स्कूल, दैट इज द स्कूल ऑफ होप. स्कूल ऑफ होप करके यहाँ पे एक स्कूल है, जहाँ पे बाकी सारे कैटेगरी के स्टूडेंट्स, जितने भी डिसेबल चिल्ड्रन हैं, कोई भी ये क्या है, वो सारे के सारे वहाँ जाते हैं. तो दे आर डूइंग क्वाइट अ गुड जॉब. स्कूल ऑफ होप जो है वो अभी काफ़ी ज़्यादा ही डेवलप कर गया है हमारे यहाँ का. तो ठीक है, द सेम थिंग इज हियर ऑल्सो. नेक्स्ट कम्स टू द स्पेशल एजुकेशन. Special education is a separate education system for disabled children outside the mainstream education. मतलब mainstream को छोड़ के हम लोग जो पढ़ रहे हैं वो मेन होता है. ठीक है, whatever we are reading, we are studying, टीचर्स जो हमें बता रही है वो सारे नॉर्मल बच्चों को बता रही है. सो उसको छोड़ के नहीं, उससे थोड़ा सा डिफरेंटली स्पेशल एजुकेशन दिया जाता है फॉर सेपरेट एजुकेशन सिस्टम. Okay, next is the special child. Children other than normal children is special child. It may be with visual disability, hearing disability, learning disability, emotional and behavior disorder, etc. Children with higher or lower IQ are also treated as special child. The basis of special education was the assumption that children with disability had some special needs that could not be met in mainstream schools. Therefore, they need to study in separate school with other children having similar needs. ठीक है, तो नॉर्मल चिल्ड्रन को छोड़ के बाकी जो भी बच्चे हैं उन्हें हम लोग स्पेशल चाइल्ड बोलते हैं. फॉर जैसे जिनको विजुअल डिसेबिलिटी होता है, हियरिंग डिसेबिलिटी, लर्निंग डिसेबिलिटी, इमोशनल बिहेवियर डिसऑर्डर्स होते हैं, उनके जो मीन्स चिल्ड्रन विथ हायर और लोअर IQ, उनका या तो नॉर्मल बच्चों से काफ़ी ज़्यादा होता है या फिर थोड़ा कम होता है. ठीक है, उनको हम लोग स्पेशल चाइल्ड, दे आर ट्रीटेड एज स्पेशल चाइल्ड, उनको हम लोग स्पेशल चाइल्ड बोलते हैं. तो इस स्पेशल एजुकेशन के बेसिस पे उनके अजम्पशन के हिसाब से क्या प्रॉब्लम है, क्या डिसेबिलिटी, उनकी डिसेबिलिटी के हिसाब से उनको स्पेशल नीड्स, स्पेशल केयर दिया जाता है, जो मेन स्ट्रीम स्कूल्स में नहीं मिल पाता है. ठीक है, सो इसीलिए उन लोगों के लिए सेपरेट स्कूल बनाया जाता है, वेयर ऑल दैट मीन्स विथ अदर चिल्ड्रन हैविंग सिमिलर नीड्स. बाकी जो भी उस तरह के स्पेशल बच्चे हैं उन सब के लिए एक स्पेशल स्कूल बनाया जाता है. ओके, third point. The special education programs are customized to address each individual's student's unique needs. The special educators provide services in which students with special needs receive support based on their individual needs. काफ़ी सारे प्रोग्राम्स कस्टमाइज किए गए हैं उनके अकॉर्डिंगली, और इनके हिसाब से मतलब उनके हिसाब से ही सारा सर्विसेज प्रोवाइड किया जाता है कि जो भी स्पेशल नीड्स वाले बच्चे उनको पूरी की पूरी सपोर्ट मिले, वो लोग आगे बढ़ पाए. Okay, next is the advantage. They play an active role in giving resource support for the mainstream schools by providing specialized services. ठीक है, पूरा मेन स्ट्रीम स्कूल के हिसाब से वो लोग पूरा का पूरा ही सपोर्ट करते हैं बच्चों को, ताकि वो लोग नॉर्मल की तरह सारा कुछ कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. ऑल्सो सिंस द चिल्ड्रन आर टॉट बाय द स्पेशलिस्ट हैविंग एक्सपर्टाइज ऑन स्पेसिफिक फील्ड, देयर नीड्स मे समटाइम्स बी अंडरस्टूड बेटर. ठीक है. ऑब्वियसली अब नॉर्मल अगर आपको और मुझे भेज दिया जाए विदाउट एनी ट्रेनिंग, बिना किसी ट्रेनिंग के, कि उस तरह के बच्चों को, स्पेशल स्टूडेंट्स को कैसे पढ़ाना है, सो हमारी लैंग्वेज उन्हें, मतलब हम पढ़ा तो लेंगे, इट्स ओके, लेकिन उतनी अच्छे से नहीं उनको क्लैरिफाई हो पाएगा. ठीक है. उतने अच्छे से हम उन्हें समझा नहीं पाएंगे कि जो भी हम समझाना चाहते हैं या तो वो समझ नहीं पाएंगे या फिर हम उतने बेटर तरीके से समझा नहीं पाएंगे. इसीलिए उसके लिए स्पेशल एक्सपर्टाइज टीचर्स होते हैं, स्पेशलिस्ट होते हैं उन सब में, जो इजीली ये सारा कुछ हैंडल कर सके. बच्चों को काफ़ी अच्छे से वो समझते हैं, उन्हें पता होता है कि हाँ इस पॉइंट को किस तरह से उन्हें एक्सप्लेन करना है. ओके, नाउ कम्स टू इट्स डिसएडवांटेजेस. कॉस्टली एज इट रिक्वायर्स सेपरेट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. ठीक है, दिस वाज द फर्स्ट पॉइंट. The children staying away from families may find it hard to stay away from their families, peers, and communities. These schools are usually not available nearby, so children to stay in residential setting. After study in special schools, children have to face difficulty in adjustment with normal atmosphere. ठीक है, आई होप यू हैव अंडरस्टूड. इसमें तो कुछ समझाने वाले पॉइंट भी नहीं है. यहाँ नॉर्मल सा चीज़ दिया गया है कि ज़रूरी नहीं है ना कि हर जगह पे ही आपको वैसे स्कूल्स मिल जाए, स्पेशल स्कूल्स मिल जाए. ठीक है, तो रेसिडेंशियल सेटिंग पूरा करना पड़ता है बच्चों के लिए. दे हैव टू स्टे देयर. फिर आफ्टर दैट उस जगह पे जहाँ उन्हें पूरी फैसिलिटीज़ मिल रही है पढ़ने की, समझने की, उसके बाद जब वो नॉर्मल एनवायरनमेंट में आते हैं, नॉर्मल एटमॉस्फेयर में आते हैं, बाकी सब नॉर्मल लोगों के साथ में, तो उन्हें थोड़ा सा टाइम लगता है, थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम होता है एडजस्ट करने में. ओके. C. Special education. Special education is for the special children like the visual impaired. ठीक है, उनके लिए है. अब उनके लिए सारा कुछ दिया गया है. May have low self esteem. Special educator भी चाहिए. Special curriculum and methodology. Limited opportunities for participation होता है. Teachers effectiveness limited to the group. Charity oriented होते हैं ये सारे schools. High cost and special school. ठीक है, तो ये सारा चीज को मिला के हमारा बनता है स्पेशल एजुकेशन. ओके, ये सारे ही चीज इंपॉर्टेंट है स्पेशल एजुकेशन के लिए. See, can you see this picture? Here it's written integration, exclusion, segregation, inclusion. ठीक है, तो ये पिक्चर आपको क्या एक्सप्लेन करना चाहता है? फर्स्ट इज द नंबर 1. हियर आई हैव रिटन नंबर 1 जस्ट बिकॉज ये है हमारा एक्सक्लूशन. पहले क्या होता था कि ये सारे जो है नॉर्मल बच्चे और ये सारे हमारे डिसेबल दैट इज स्पेशल चाइल्ड्स है. ठीक है, स्पेशल चाइल्ड जो होते थे वो हमेशा स्कूल से दूर ही रहते थे, नहीं आने मिलता था उनको. ठीक है, दिस वॉज द फर्स्ट पॉइंट जिसे हम लोग बोलते हैं एक्सक्लूशन. उसके बाद आता है हमारा सेग्रीगेशन. सेग्रीगेशन में क्या होता है, इन दोनों के लिए ही, मतलब ये तो हमारे नॉर्मल स्टूडेंट्स के लिए नॉर्मल स्कूल्स है, और ये हमारे जो स्पेशल बच्चे हैं उनके लिए एक अलग से स्कूल बनाया जाता है. ठीक है, नेक्स्ट इज द थर्ड वन दैट इज इंटीग्रेशन. थर्ड हमारा यहाँ इंटीग्रेशन. इंटीग्रेशन का मतलब है कि नॉर्मल स्कूल्स में भी फिर उसके बाद क्या होता है इंटीग्रेशन, जो हम आगे पढ़ने वाले हैं कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ इंटीग्रेशन जैसे उसके नीचे, उसमें क्या है कि नॉर्मल स्कूल्स में ही कुछ स्पेशल स्टूडेंट्स के लिए स्पेशल नीड्स के साथ में, सारे स्पेशल चीज़ के साथ में, वॉट एवर दे वांट, उनके साथ में उन्हें स्कूल में एंट्री दिया जाता है. ठीक है, लेकिन यहाँ पे क्या था कि इंटीग्रेशन में क्या था कि स्पेशल स्टूडेंट है तो उन पे स्पेशल ध्यान दिया जाता है, वो नॉर्मल स्टूडेंट्स की तरह से नॉर्मल नहीं रह सकते. एंड आफ्टर दैट कम्स टू द इंक्लूजन, दैट इज द फोर्थ वन, इंक्लूजन. इंक्लूजन में क्या होता है कि नॉर्मल चिल्ड्रन के साथ ही स्पेशल चिल्ड्रन भी रहना सीख जाते हैं, एनवायरनमेंट के साथ एडजस्ट करना सीख जाते हैं. उसी स्कूल में, एक ही स्कूल में दोनों ही टाइप्स ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स पढ़ रहे हैं, स्पेशल स्टूडेंट्स भी और नॉर्मल चिल्ड्रन. ओके, सो दिस वाज द पिक्चर. नाउ कम्स टू द इंटीग्रेटेड एजुकेशन. Integrated education, concept of integration. As we seen in special education, children have to study separately in rarely available special schools. ठीक है, बहुत ही रेयर अवेलेबल होता है ये सारे स्कूल्स, है ना. एक जगह पे है तो दूसरी जगह पे नहीं है, वहाँ के स्टूडेंट्स को इधर आना पड़ता है, वैसा. So it is very difficult for them to study and to adjust with the society after completion of their study. Also, a few children were able to study in these schools and most of them were still away from the school. कुछ स्टूडेंट्स, लाइक मैंने भी कहा ना आपको, जमशेदपुर में है तो जमशेदपुर में कुछ स्टूडेंट्स वहाँ पे पढ़ सकते हैं, बट व्हाट अबाउट अदर्स जो दूसरी जगह पे है, वहाँ का क्या. वहाँ पे अगर स्पेशल स्कूल्स नहीं है तो वेयर द स्टूडेंट्स विल स्टडी, वही होता था. ठीक है. पॉवर्टी एंड डिसेबिलिटी हैव अ कॉज एंड इफेक्ट रिलेशनशिप विद ईच अदर, वन थिंग लीडिंग टू अनदर. Poverty disability combination results in a condition of simultaneous deprivation. So, unless and until the people with special needs are provided with education, they would not be able to gain financial independence and the real kind of rehabilitation would not take place. ठीक है. तो जब तक उन लोगों को नहीं पता रहता था, वो लोग स्पेशल ही उन्हें नीड्स प्रोवाइड किए जाते थे, स्पेशल एजुकेशन प्रोवाइड किए जाते थे, तो उनको पूरा अपनी तरह में वो फाइनेंशियल इंडिपेंडेंस उनमें नहीं आ पाता था. ठीक है. दे वर अनेबल टू गेन. सो उसके बाद फिर हमारा आता है इंक्लूजन. देखते हैं, आइए. इंटीग्रेशन सिग्निफाइज द प्रोसेस ऑफ इंटरैक्शन ऑफ डिसेबल्ड चिल्ड्रन विद नॉर्मल चिल्ड्रन इन द सेम एजुकेशन सेटिंग. ठीक है. सेम एजुकेशन सेटिंग में बस थोड़ा बहुत डिफरेंसेस रहता है, थोड़ा सा उनको स्पेशल केयर मिलता है, स्पेशल नीड्स के साथ में वो इसी स्कूल में एंटर कर जाते हैं. ठीक है. दिस वाज द थर्ड पॉइंट. Integration also means mainstreaming or normalization as disabled children are treated same with normal children. Now, लेकिन बस थोड़ा सा ही डिफरेंस होता है इंटीग्रेशन और इंक्लूजन में. इंटीग्रेशन में थोड़ा सा ही स्पेशल स्टूडेंट्स को थोड़ा सा ही ये मिलता है, स्पेशल ट्रीटमेंट मिलता है. ओके. Integrated education. Integrated education is the educational program in which exceptional children attend classes with normal children on either a part or full-time basis. Part-time या full-time basis. It is placement of the disabled children in ordinary school with some specialized educational help and services. यही चीज़ जो मैं अभी आपको बोल रही थी. ठीक है. स्पेशलाइज्ड एजुकेशनल हेल्प और सर्विसेज के साथ में उन्हें एंट्री मिलता है ऑर्डिनरी स्कूल्स में. इट डज नॉट नेसेसरली इंटीग्रेट ऑल स्टूडेंट्स हु आर अवे फ्रॉम द एजुकेशन फॉर एनी रीजन लाइक फिजिकली, मेंटली, सोशली डिप्राइव्ड, बट बिकॉज ऑफ एनी कास्ट, क्रीड, जेंडर, रेस, एबिलिटी, डिसेबिलिटी, लाइफस्टाइल एक्सेट्रा. Government of India introduced to promote integrated education is a program of integrated education of disabled children that is called as IEDC. ठीक है. In 1974, the Ministry of Welfare, Central Government of India, initiated the IEDC program to promote the integration of students with mild to moderate disabilities into regular school. Objective was the education for all and with the purpose of integrating the physically and mentally challenged people in the society as equal members. The aim of the scheme known as Integrated Education for Disabled Children, that is IEDC program, is to enable such people to face the life boldly and develop a level of self-confidence, thus bring up them with the mainstream society. This has been regarded as one of the major initiatives from the Government of India to promote integrated education. This program was initiated in 1974 by Ministry of Welfare. The IEDC program was revised in 1992. In the revised program, 100% assistance was available to schools involved in the integration of students with disabilities. Various NGOs are also now fully funded to implement the program. IEDC is being implemented in almost all the states and union territories. The program provided children with financial supports for books, stationery, school uniform, teachers training, etc. ठीक है. Nature of integrated education. Learning for knowledge, learning for drawing, learning for live together, and learning for integration of whole education. Next is the format of integrated education. First is the resource room model. Second is the integrated teacher model, combined model, cluster model, cooperative model, dual teaching model, and multi-skills teaching model. Okay, now comes to the scope of integrated education. Identify the type, degree of disability and amount. To establish resource center on district and block level. To provide education facility to disabled children admit with mainstream children. To make available assessment team and assist in the rehabilitation to disabled children. Preschool training to children and counseling to their parents. To facilitate education up to higher secondary to disabled children. To make arrangement for vocational education, assessment for medical and functional status of disabled and to provide kindergarten education center. ठीक है, ये सारे के सारे हैं स्कोप ऑफ इंटीग्रेटेड एजुकेशन में. अब हम लोग आते हैं फैसिलिटीज प्रोवाइडेड अंडर इंटीग्रेटेड एजुकेशन. क्या क्या फैसिलिटीज प्रोवाइड किया जाता है? टू प्रोवाइड बुक्स एंड स्टेशनरीज, यूनिफॉर्म, traveling allowance if stay away from school, reader allowance for blind children after class 5, escort allowance for severely disabled children and allowance for instrument etc. ये सारे allowance मिलते हैं by the government. Okay, next is the importance of integrated education. It does not create feeling of difference among disabled children. It provides peer group from normal children also. It helps to remove inferiority complex among disabled children. It provides disabled children a chance to enjoy school life with normal children, and it enhances social integration. It is less expensive as special infrastructure is not required. Special learning material and specially trained teachers are not appointed. Only resource teacher is appointed if required. It inculcates affection, love and respect for differently able children among normal children. Children live in home. Just a minute, एक point छूट गया, ये next point. Disabled or challenged children may get help from peers for learning, get motivated, and children live in home with parents or in touch with the parents. ठीक है, तो ये सब था हमारा integrated education. Next is the shortcomings of integrated education. In integrated education, disabled children considered as a problem. ठीक है, lack of trained and experienced teacher was there. So lack of awareness of problem of disabled children and their educational needs was also there. Lack of equipment and educational materials. Lack of coordination among the various departments for its proper implementation. इतने सारे limitations होने के बाद उसके बाद हमारा आता है इंक्लूजन. ठीक है, इंटीग्रेटेड में वही बच्चों को, स्पेशल स्टूडेंट्स को उन्हें ला करके नॉर्मल स्कूल्स में एडमिशन दे दिया जाता है. उन्हें देने के बाद में ये सारे प्रॉब्लम्स आते हैं. आफ्टर ऑफ दिस प्रॉब्लम्स, टू ओवरकम दिस प्रॉब्लम्स, फिर क्या जाता है, उन्हें स्पेशल केयर दिया जाता है ना, स्पेशल अटेंशन दिया जाता है. अब वैसा कुछ नहीं होगा. इंक्लूजन में क्या होता है कि सारे बच्चे एक साथ एक ही जैसे पढ़ते हैं. वेट अ सेकेंड, लेट मी शो यू अ पिक्चर. देखिए यहाँ पे ये है हमारा इंटीग्रेशन का, ये है हमारा इंक्लूजन का. नहीं, क्लियर शायद नहीं दिख रही है. यहाँ पे जस्ट एक चेयर है, यहाँ पे भी एक है, यहाँ पे भी एक है. इसमें जो सबसे छोटा बच्चा जो है, इट्स ऑल्सो स्टैंडिंग इन अ बेंच. ये भी एक बेंच पे खड़ा है और ये भी एक बेंच में खड़ा है. ठीक है, जिससे इसे दिख रहा है नहीं दिख रहा है उसे किसी को कोई मतलब नहीं है. बट इंक्लूजन में क्या होता है, इंक्लूजन में ये हो रहा है कि ये जो सबसे बड़े, जो सबसे टॉल वन है, ये स्टैंडिंग जस्ट ऑन द फ्लोर, वो सीधे के सीधे फ्लोर पे ही है. जो उससे थोड़े से शॉर्ट है, उन्होंने बस एक बॉक्स और एक बेंच, एक चेयर का सहारा लिया. और जो सबसे छोटा था, जिसे एक इंटीग्रेशन में यहाँ पे तीनों को सिमिलैरिटी के साथ में एक एक चेयर दिए गए थे, तीनों एक एक चेयर पे खड़े हैं. बट यहाँ ऐसा नहीं है. यहाँ पे जो सबसे छोटे उन्हें 2 चेयर दिए गए, 2 लेवल अप कर दिए गए, सो दैट यू कैन सी द क्रिकेट मैच. ठीक है, जो उससे थोड़े से लंबे हैं, लेकिन अगर उन्हें नहीं दिख रहा है तो ही हैज गिवन चेयर, एक इन्हें भी प्रोवाइड किया गया है. बट जो टॉलेस्ट वन है उन्हें कुछ भी प्रोवाइड नहीं किया गया, बिकॉज ही कैन सी इजीली. तो ये था हमारा इंक्लूजन, जहाँ पे हम लोग बच्चों के केयर के साथ में उन्हें किस तरह से लाइफ जीना है, कैसे आपको क्या करना है, वो सारा कुछ सिखाया जाता है विद द नॉर्मल चिल्ड्रन के साथ. ठीक है, सो मीनिंग एंड कंसेप्ट ऑफ इंक्लूजन. लेट अस स्टार्ट. The concept of inclusion was accepted in 1948 with the declaration adopted by the UN General Assembly on the International Bill of Rights, which recognizes that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. This declaration fundamentally seeks to deal with the issue of discrimination at all levels in every facet of society. Every phase of society. Inclusion of education. Inclusion in education involves the process of increasing the participating of students in and reducing their exclusion from the cultures, curriculum, and communities of local schools. Inclusion involves restructuring the cultures, policies, and practices in schools so that they respond to the diversity of students in their locality. Inclusion is concerned with the learning and participation of all students vulnerable to exclusionary pressures, not only those with impairments or those who are categorized having special education needs. ये सभी के लिए था. Inclusion is concerned with improving schools for staff as well as for students. All students have the right to an education in their locality. Diversity is not viewed as a problem to be overcome but as a rich resource to support the learning for all. And inclusion is concerned with fostering mutually sustaining relationship between schools and communities. Okay, so this was the concept and meaning of the inclusive schools, inclusive education. Now next point is right to access, equality and quality education. Policy framework in international context. The principles of inclusion that are set out in various international declarations can be used as the foundation. These then can be interpreted and adapted to the context of individual countries. Okay. A rights-based approach to education is founded upon three principles. First is access to free and compulsory education, equality, inclusion, and non-discrimination. The third is the right to quality education, content, and processes. At the core of inclusive education is the human right to education, pronounced in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, which states, everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Okay, so this was the right to access, equality and quality education. Now comes to UNESCO Convention Against Discrimination in Education 1916. This convention, which entered into force on May 22, 1962 and is UNESCO's first major international instrument which has binding force in international law. It prohibits all discrimination based on race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinions, national or social origins, economic condition, or birth. UN Declaration for Right of Disabled Person 1975. Statement adopted by the United Nations UN General Assembly on December 9, 1975. In the Declaration on the Rights of Disabled Persons states that all persons with disabilities have the same rights as other persons. Okay. Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women 1979. The convention defines discrimination against women as any distinction, exclusion, or restriction made on the basis of sex. UN Conference on Right of Children 1989. State ensure right of children without discrimination. State recognizes the rights of disabled children and will make special arrangement for care of them. State will ensure for satisfactory and active participation in the society of the mental and physical disabled children. Jointine World Declaration on Education for All 1990. Highlights the declaration to a child-focused teaching methods where singular contrasts are acknowledged as a challenge and not an issue. Salamanca Statement and Framework for Action, UNESCO 1994. Reinforces the school's obligation to accommodate all children regardless of their physical, intellectual, social, emotional, linguistic, or other condition. Furthermore, than 92 governments and 25 worldwide associations considered the essential arrangements shift required to advance the approach of inclusion education. Along these lines, empowering schools to serve all pupils, especially those with special education needs. Next is Dakar Framework for Education, Dakar World Education Conference, UNESCO 2000. In notes on the Dakar Framework for Education 2000, the World Education Forum highlights the importance of inclusive education and reiterates that the inclusion of children with various educationally disadvantaged positions, such as children with special needs from ethnic minorities, remote communities, and others excluded from education, must be an integral part of strategies to achieve universal primary education. Next is BWACO Millennium Framework. In May 2002, the United Nations Economic and Social Commissions for Asia and the Pacific, that is ESCAP, adopted the resolution promoting inclusive, barrier-free and rights-based society for people with disabilities in the Asian and Pacific regions in the 21st century. UNCRPD Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2006. Article 24 recognizes the right of persons with disabilities to education in an inclusive education system. They set out the central elements that need to be addressed in order to ensure the right to access to education, the right to quality education, and the right to respect in the learning environment. CRPD, which is the first international human rights treaty of the 21st century, fills a considerable gap in international human rights law. CRPD, which is the first international human rights treaty of the 21st century, fills a considerable gap in the international human rights laws. Sorry, ये वाला part जो है ये repeat हो गया. This point has been repeated. ठीक है, एक point लीजिएगा, एक point cut कर दीजिएगा. ठीक है. The CRPD was accepted in 2006 and entered into force on 3rd May, additionally 2008. Now, constitutional provisions. In India, the constitution states that everyone has the right to equality of status and opportunity. It ensures for all its citizens equality before law, non-discrimination, and the right to life and liberty. Article 14. Article 14 of the Constitution of India provides for equality before the law or equal protection of the law within the territory of India. It states, the state shall not deny to any person equality before the law or the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. Next is Article 15. A fundamental rights prohibits discrimination by the state against any citizen on grounds only of religion, caste, sex, race, and place of birth. Article 19. The Constitution of India provides the right of freedom given in Article 19 with the view of guaranteeing individual rights that were considered vital by the framers of the Constitution. The right of freedom in Article 19 guarantees the freedom of speech and expression. Article 21. The Constitution guarantees the life and personal liberty to all persons. It guarantees the right of persons to life with human dignity. Therein are included all the aspects of life which go to make a person's life meaningful, complete, worth living. Article 21A of Indian Constitution. The state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children of 6 to 14 years in such manner as the state may by law determine. Accordingly, right to education has been made a fundamental right. Next is Article 41. The state shall, within the limits of its economic capacity and development, make effective provision for securing the right to work, to education, and to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement, and in other cases of undeserved want. Article 45 of Constitution of India. It is a provision for free and compulsory education for children. The state shall endeavour to provide within a period of 10 years from the commencement of this constitution for free and compulsory education for all children until they complete the age of 14 years. Next is the Quotary Commission 1964 to 66. Officially, the Quotary Commission first addressed the issues of access and participation by all. It stressed a common school system open to all children, irrespective of caste, creed, community, religion, economic condition, and social status. More number of primary to reach the goal of providing free and compulsory education to children of 6 to 14 years. Each district um, each district should have at least one school for disability and to provide scholarship to students. Okay, next is the NPE 1968, that is National Policy on Education. On the basis of recommendation of Education Commission in 1968, the National Education Policy followed suggested the expansion of educational facilities for physically and mentally handicapped children and the development of an integrated programs enabling handicapped children to study in regular schools. Main points of NPE: free and compulsory primary education and emphasis on equality of educational opportunities. The Integrated Education of Disabled Children, that is IEDC 1974. The Ministry of Welfare created the Integrated Education and Disabled Children Scheme, that is IEDC, in 1974. The scheme provides children with disabilities financial supports for books, school uniforms, transportation, special equipment, and aids, with the intention of using these aids to include children in mainstream classrooms. Next is NPE 1986, National Policy on Education 1986. इसके पहले हम लोग 68 किए थे, अब हम लोग 86 वाला कर रहे हैं. Okay, the policy gives emphasis on the removal of disparities and equalize educational opportunities by attending to the specific needs of those who have been denied equality. It stresses on reducing dropout rates, improving learning achievements, and expanding access to students who have not had an easy opportunity to be a part of the general system. Stressed on development teacher training programs, especially for teachers of primary classes. Next is Project for Integrated Education for the Disabled, that is b.ed. In 1987, to fulfill the provisions for disabled children in the NPE 1986, the government launched the Project for Integrated Education for the Disabled, that is b.ed. It was a joint venture of MHRD and UNICEF. It states, wherever feasible, the education of children with motor handicaps and other mild handicaps will be in common with that of others. Plan of Action POA 1992. The NPE was followed by POA 1992. The POA suggested a pragmatic principle for children with special needs. It suggested that a child with disability who can be educated in a general school should be educated in a general school only. Even those children who are initially admitted to special schools for training in plus curriculum skills should be transferred to general schools once they acquire daily living skills, communication skills, and basic academic skills. Next is the Rehabilitation Council of India Act, that is RCI Act 1992. The POA 1992 was strengthened by the enactment of the RCI Act in 1992. It was introduced because no act or institutions was available to ensure rehabilitation, quality education, and training for disabled. The mandate given to RCI is to regulate and monitor services given to persons with disability to standardize syllabus. Provision also made to maintain a central rehabilitation register to all qualified profession and personnel working in the field of rehabilitation and special education. The Act also prescribed punitive action against unqualified persons delivering services persons with disability. Next is persons with disability, Equal Opportunities, Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995. It was a significant step for ensuring equal opportunities for people with disabilities and their full participation in the nation building. This act also stated that every child with disability have right to free education in an appropriate environment till the age of 18 years in integrated schools or special schools. The PWD Act is supposed to provide transport facilities, remove architectural barriers, supply free books and other study materials, grant scholarships, restructure curriculum, and modify the examination system for the benefit of students with special needs. The Act also addresses teacher training for special educators and mainstream educators. Next is Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, that is SSA 2000 to 2001. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan SSA was launched to achieve the goal of universalization of elementary education. This adopts a zero rejection policy and uses an approach of converging various schemes and programs. The key objective of SSA is universalization of elementary education, that is UEE. Three important aspects of UEE are access, enrollment, and retention of all children in 6 to 14 years of age. A zero rejection policy has been adopted under SSA, which ensures that every child with special needs CWSN, irrespective of the kind, category, and degree of disability, is provided meaningful and quality education. It covers the following components under education for children with special needs: functional and formal assessment, aids and appliances, support services, teaching training, resource support, individual educational plan, that is IEP, parental training and community mobilization, planning and management, strengthening of special schools, removal of architectural barriers, research, monitoring and evaluation, girls with disabilities. Okay, next is the NCF 2005, that is National Curriculum Framework. Recommends that a policy of inclusion needs to be implemented in all schools and throughout educational system. School needs to become centers that prepare children for life and ensures that all children, especially the differently abled and 8 by 13 children from marginalized section, get the maximum benefit of this critical area of education. Next is National Policy for Education for Persons with Disabilities, that is 2006. The Government of India formulated the National Policy for Persons with Disabilities in February 2006, which deals with physical, education, and economic rehabilitation of persons with disabilities. The policy stresses for program for prevention of disability. Act also focuses upon rehabilitation of women and children with disabilities, barrier-free environment, social security, and research, etc. Next is the RTE Act 2009. The 86th Amendment of the Constitution of India 2002 introduced new Article 21A by making the right to education of children from 6 to 14 years of age a fundamental right. Article 51A(k) was added to Part 4A of the Constitution as a fundamental duty of parents to provide opportunities for education to their children aged between 6 to 14. The right of children to free and compulsory education, that is RCFCE Act 2009, come into effect from April 1, 2010. The RTE Act tries to safeguard the rights of the children belonging to the disadvantaged groups and the weaker section, protect them from any kind of discrimination, and ensure their completion of elementary education. As per amendment in the RTE 2010, children with disabilities have been included in the definition of child belonging to disadvantaged group. At least 25% of its entry-level class students from children belonging to weaker and disadvantaged groups. Next is Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2016. The act replaces the Persons with Disabilities, that is Equal Opportunities, Protection of Rights and Participation Act 1995. It fulfills the obligations to the United Nations National Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities, that is UNCRPD, to which India is a signatory. This act covers 21 of disabilities instead of 7 disabilities in PWD Act 1995. Every child with disability between the age group of 6 to 14 years shall have the rights to free education. Okay, so this was the Rights of Person with Disabilities Act 2016. यहाँ तक हमने सारा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशंस एंड एक्ट्स एंड ह्यूमन राइट्स एंड ऑल के बारे में पढ़ लिया है. अब हम आते हैं इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन पे. ओके, सो इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन, दैट्स इट्स डेफिनेशन, कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स एंड प्रिंसिपल. First comes to inclusive education. Inclusive education means learning environment that promotes full personal, academic, and professional development of all learners irrespective of race, class, color, gender, disability, learning style, and language. It includes all the students who are away from the education for any reason, like physically or mentally challenged, economically, socially deprived, or belonging to any caste, creed, gender, etc. Okay, historical background. Separate Education for Disabled 1880s, the Integrated Education for Disabled Children Scheme in 1974, National Policy on Education 1986, Project Integrated Education for Disabled 1987, Rehabilitation Council India Act 1992, Program of Action 1992, PWD Act 1995, DPEP 1997, Nation Trust Act 1999, SSA 2000, making all schools disabled friendly by 2020. It was the Act of 2005. Now comes Principles of Inclusive Education. No discrimination with students, equal educational opportunity to all, school adapt to the need of students, equal educational benefits for all students, the students' views are listened to and taken seriously, individual differences between students are a source of richness and diversity and not a problem. Next is need of inclusive education. Normal mental growth is possible, social integration is possible, inclusive education is less expensive, integration is possible through inclusive education, academic integration is possible, principle of equality is maintained, and fulfill the constitutional responsibilities. This was the need of inclusive education. Now comes to the characteristics of inclusive education. Education for all, minimizing barriers, education based on diversity, child-centered approach, proper resource and support, solution to the problem of segregation, and relevant curriculum. So here we have completed the first unit of paper 10, that is the inclusive education. Okay, I'll be back with the second unit also बहुत जल्दी ही. ठीक है, so if this, I hope this video is helpful for you. For the Kulhan University students, all the topics have been covered here. जितने भी topics हमने किए, जितने भी topics आपके syllabus में दिया है, वो सारे ही topics हमने cover up किया है. So it's good, and बाकी others के लिए तो ये match करता ही है, so you can also check. ठीक है, if this video is helpful for you, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Okay. Thank you for watching.